Hello, my name is Hans Hanley, and I'll be presenting the work Happenstance, utilizing semantic search to track Russian state media narratives about the Russo-Ukrainian war on Reddit. This work was done in conjunction with Deepak Kumar and Professor Zakir Durumrich in the first 2 months following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On February 24, 2022, the Russian Federation, led by President Vladimir Putin, began a purported special military operation to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. In conjunction with the military operation, the Russian state government also simultaneously launched various disinformation and propaganda campaigns, ranging from the idea that the Ukrainian government and military are filled with neo-Nazis to the idea that the Russian government invaded Ukraine to uncover and shut down US-funded bioweapons laboratories. In response to the torrent of disinformation emanating from many Russian state-backed news sources, such as Russia Today and Sputnik News, various Western entities took aggressive action. For instance, on March 1, 2022, Reddit quarantined the r/Russia subreddit, where Russian propaganda was shown to be rampant. Telegram also banned the official accounts of many Russian outlets. Finally, throughout the European Union and the UK, the Russia Today news channel was taken off the airwaves. However, despite the aggressive action of many Western entities, Russian disinformation about the war still has penetrated various parts of the internet. The image from the r/Russia subreddit on the left, for instance, supposedly shows the Ukrainian people welcoming Russian soldiers as liberators in Mariupol, where in actuality thousands of Ukrainians perished fighting against the Russian invasion. The image on the right, meanwhile, shows a new website, War on Fakes, that appeared at the beginning of the war, and that utilizes faux fact-checking techniques to bash the reporting of Western newspapers and the statements of Western governments. Given how far Russian state media and disinformation narratives have spread, and the difficulty that social media platforms have in removing these narratives from their platforms, we ask, 1. While presently most reporting on Russian state media narratives is ad hoc, is there a way of identifying Russian state media narratives automatically? 2. After identifying these narratives, is there a more robust and keyword-agnostic way to automatically determine where Russian state media narratives are being spread? To answer these questions, we propose the following system, Happenstance. Namely, after collecting a set of 2,683 articles about Ukraine published between January 1st and March 15th from a set of 10 Russian propaganda websites, we utilize sentence-level topic analysis with a large language model to identify the most prominent narratives being pushed by these Russian websites. Then, making use of semantic search, we identify Reddit comments that conform to these narratives, allowing us to track the presence of particular topics promoted by the Russian government across the Reddit social media platform. The key intuition of our approach is to consider each sentence in our set of Russian propaganda websites as being about one topic. By considering each sentence as being about one topic, we can then leverage a large language model to embed, cluster, and essentially classify the singular topic of each sentence. More specifically, after identifying our set of 2,683 Ukraine-related news articles, we utilize a fine-tuned version of MPNet, a contextual word model released by Microsoft Research to embed sentences into a shared subspace. Using BERT Topics approach, with all these sentences in a shared embedding space, we then perform dimensionality reduction, clustering, and finally the extraction of keywords, thus allowing us to identify topics present in our set of Russian website articles. For instance, if we had 4 sentences, 3 of them being about Ukrainian neo-Nazis, and 1 of them being about US-funded bioweapons laboratories, after mapping them to their respective embeddings, the 3 sentences about Ukrainian neo-Nazis would have high cosine similarity to each other. Clustering these embeddings based on their cosine similarities, we would subsequently be able to identify the different clusters present amongst our embeddings, in this case, the prominent one being about Ukrainian neo-Nazis. Upon identifying this cluster, using a class-based TF-IDF method, we can then identify the keywords of this cluster. Evaluating this methodology across 30 topics, we find on average that 98.9% of the sentences match their extracted keywords in the topic of their respective cluster. You can see our paper for more details about this evaluation. After evaluating this method, we find that some of the most prominent narratives being spread by Russian outlets included those about Joe Biden, about US-funded biological weapons laboratories, and about negotiations on ending the conflict. Using this method, we can also identify which websites may have originated different narratives. For instance, on March 6th, the Russian website TASS published reporting that Russia had purportedly identified US-funded bioweapons laboratories in Ukraine. Using our method, we managed to automatically identify that TASS was the website that began this narrative. Our method, furthermore, identified the number of articles that each website in our dataset published about this narrative. Extending this to all the narratives identified within our dataset, we further can understand which set of websites tend to originate narratives in general versus those that tend to republish or magnify the narratives of other websites. In this graph, the websites that tend to originate narratives are blue, while those that magnify narratives are orange. Having identified the topics present within the Russian news ecosystem at the start of the Russo-Ukrainian war, we next determine how these narratives spread and their presence on the r/Russia subreddit prior to it being quarantined. To do this, we map 53,000 Reddit comments from r/Russia from early 2022 to the same embedding space as our articles. We then assign each Reddit comment to the topic cluster that it's most similar to, if its similarity to that cluster reaches a given threshold. For example, taking a Reddit comment about biological weapons being developed by Ukraine by the US government and mapping that to our set of topic narratives, it would get mapped to the topic cluster about US-funded biological weapons. Performing a manual evaluation, we find that cosine similarity of 0.6 between a Reddit comment's embedding and the topic embedding leads to the most precise results without sacrificing recall. You can see our paper for more details about this evaluation. At the similarity threshold, 39.6 of r/Russia comments corresponded with a topic from our set of Russian news articles. Examining how r/Russia comments matched Russian-sponsored topics over time, we observe a steady increase throughout 2022 before the number of comments plummeted after Reddit began seriously policing the subreddit following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is true regardless of the cosine similarity threshold that we utilize to assign a Reddit comment to a given topic cluster. Looking across a wider set of political subreddits beyond r/Russia, we find the presence of topics pushed by Russian state media throughout Reddit, with the r/Geopolitics subreddit having the most pronounced percentage, at 61.8% of its comments corresponding to a Russian topic. Finally, we examined the spread and presence of two specific Russian propaganda stories, one being the idea of US-funded Ukrainian bioweapons laboratories, and the second being that the Ukrainian government and military are filled with neo-Nazis. We find, overall, across all our measured subreddits that there were more comments about Ukraine being controlled by neo-Nazis than about US-funded bioweapons, with the r/Politics subreddit having the largest amount of comments about these two stories. Our work shows that by using large language models, fine-tuned on semantic similarity tasks, along with clustering techniques, we can identify the major narratives being touted by Russian propaganda websites. By then performing fine-grained analysis, we can then identify the magnitude and presence of specific disinformation narratives across social media, particularly, in this case, Reddit. We note that our work can be extended to track and trace propaganda and media narratives across the internet. By automatically identifying the set of promoted narratives present on a given website, and then finding similar narratives across sites like Reddit or Twitter, our approach can be utilized to understand the scale and influence of different ideas, disinformation or otherwise. Once these narratives are identified, subsequent action can be taken in accordance with each platform's values. Thank you, and you can find me at the following links.